All right, folks, welcome back. It is 3:45 Eastern, at least. So we are going to get started again. This was sort of a break in the Rebekah and Joe show. They took us through the content systems. And so now we're going to pick back up with Rebekah and Joe on the mapping systems. To kick us back off, we welcome back Rebekah Wallace to the screen, wearing her other hat as the EDDMapS Data Coordinator. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so this kind of block is about our mapping systems, and so I will be talking about EDDMapS and our citizen science tools, again, following the upload, find, and share kind of overall life cycle theme, whatever you want to call that. So since the beginning, EDDMapS has functioned as an electronic early detection tool. We aggregate data from a wide variety of sources, including homeowners, trained citizen scientists, federal and state agencies, herbaria, museums, academic institutions, and existing regional and topical databases. What this allows us to do is to help identify the existing range, gaps, and the leading edges in these distribution maps for these different species. We also work to make this data available through downloads, visualizations, statistics, and more. And honestly, reporting is the first step in management and prevention and research. So reporting serves as kind of the foundation for a lot of these other works being done by the people who are using EDDMapS and similar systems. So some of you may have seen this graphic before, but I like to talk about EDDMapS as kind of like a Swiss Army knife or a Swiss Army tool, or maybe like a toolbox full of tools. So we have a lot of different features and functionality that's built into EDDMapS. We have early detection tools in place. We have our verification system, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We have EDDMapS projects. We've been talking about projects off and on for a couple of years now. So it's for assigning data together that would be difficult to query otherwise. I'm going to talk about querying data in a little bit, but projects are a way for you to say this data belongs together because it was part of a grant or it was part of something like an outreach campaign, and those are kind of difficult things to query otherwise. We also have our EDDMapS alerts. So if you want to be notified when a verified record of a particular species or in a particular area has been reported, you can set up alerts through the My EDDMapS part of the website. Data sharing and collaboration, that's kind of the name of the EDDMapS game. So we are all about sharing and collaboration. A lot of the tools we've built are kind of centered around sharing and collaboration. We have visualizations. I'll be showing you a few different maps in a little bit. And then EDDMapS, and especially EDDMapS Pro, are key for monitoring and management of invasive and pest species populations. So the kind of basic flow of EDDMapS data, you have the data submitted into the EDDMapS database. So that can be through our web forms. That is sometimes through the main EDDMapS website, or sometimes through our partners having web forms on their own websites. Our smartphone apps, primarily, we've been talking about our EDDMapS app and our EDDMapS Pro app the last few years, but we do have a few other apps, and I'll go over a couple of them later. Our bulk data files. So I've seen a lot of very familiar names in our attendees list, and I know a lot of them from being bulk uploaders. So I recognize a lot of names on there and go, I've dealt with your data before. I've formatted your data before, and I've helped you upload your data too. So these are data sets that are being collected outside of either the EDDMapS web form or being collected outside of the EDDMapS smartphone apps. They're being collected and then sent to us later. And then there's also our API, so we do get data in that way. Any of these different ways that data comes in, it needs to be reviewed. And these verifiers, these local expert verifiers, there are a lot of times the same people who would be needing to respond to these reports or needing to at least be aware of these reports anyway. So you're going to see a lot of people who are part of state and federal agencies, who are part of academia, just local experts who work in the field and have a vested interest in, one, knowing where these species are, and also ensuring that the data that's available through EDDMapS is accurate. And then once you have accurate reviewed data available, that's going to show up on our maps, in our data downloads, on our dashboards, as well as in statistics. And just a reminder, any questions you have, make sure you put them in the Q&A so that we can keep track of them and make sure that I answer them at the end of this presentation. So now that data exists in EDDMapS, how do you find it? Well, if you go to our main homepage, or you're on our EDDMapS website, you'll see maps at the top as a tab, a header tab, and it'll take you to our distribution maps page where you can view our maps by species for states, counties, or points. And then if you look at our counties map, for some of these species, we're going to have a lot of options available. So we're looking at Canada thistle here. It defaults to the distribution maps, which just says at least one positive record of this exists in this county. We also have our record density map. So a number of reports of this species exist in these counties. And then for certain species, we'll have predictive modeling maps. So in working with our various partners, in some occasions we've worked with researchers who work on where are these species going to be in the future. And to make sure that their data lives on and is more available than existing solely in a journal article, we work with them to help make sure that these data are available through our website. So the future range, future certainty, future abundance, habitat, those types of maps are available for certain species, especially plant species, to kind of help people understand and have an idea of where these species are going to be in the future. If you want more information about those types of maps, if you're on that map, there's a blue info button. You can see that on the right map, kind of directly above Michigan. And that'll give you some idea of where these species will be in the future. We also have our dashboards. So if you go to the My EDDMapS section of the website, you can have up to several dashboards that exist. So if you're a reporter, you'll have your reporter dashboard, your My Dashboard. If you're a verifier, you'll have access to a verifier dashboard. Anyone who has an account will be able to see the EDDMapS dashboard. And if you are a part of a project, there's project dashboards are available under the project heading. They're a little bit separated from the main dashboards. So what we're looking at on the right here is the EDDMapS dashboard. So you can set certain filters to see data from certain date ranges. If you want to include or exclude bulk data, if you're looking for data for a particular state or even just a specific county. And if you want to include all of the data, or just say if you're just interested in plants or just interested in insects, you can set your division to reflect that. And what you're going to be able to see as you're moving these filters around is that you're going to see graphs, statistics, charts, tables, and more. There's more than I could show you just on this little screenshot here. It goes further down the page. But what you'll also be able to do is there's a green button on the right side under the filter kind of block, and that's to download these data as a PowerPoint. So if you are responsible for a particular county or a particular state, you want to get an idea of what's being reported, all of those things, you can set your criteria in the filter and then download that PowerPoint and have that ready for any sort of presentation you're prepared to give. If in addition to having the dashboards and the basic maps available on the distribution maps page, we also have the EDDMapS query tool. So you can reach the query tool under the tools page. And what you will be able to do is set additional filters to your specific needs for your specific question. We have the simple filter available, and then there's also the advanced filter. It's at the top next to the left of the word query tools. And what that allows you to do is look at data that's more specific to your needs, and you can also download it as well. In addition to this basic query tool, we also have where you can query by other geographic locations. So in our main EDDMapS page, you can see by state, you can see by county, you can see by point. In our query tools, you can see things as showing up as points. With the other geographics location, again, that's under the tools page, under species locator, other geographic locations. These are publicly available boundaries, so state forests, national parks, wetlands and preserves or reserves, all of those things. In this case, we're looking at the Heartland SYSMA, which is in Florida. So selecting the Heartland SYSMA, we can see that there are all these points that have been reported within the Heartland, Florida SYSMA. You can turn on and off different invasion statuses as well as the different types of divisions. You can see that below the map there is a table that shows you how many species fitting those criteria fall within those boundaries. You can even set a buffer around the boundary if you're interested in what's been reported nearby. And then all of these, once you've found what you're interested in, you can share this. So the maps have the ability for you to select to download the data or share the data or download the map itself, screenshot the map. So usually in the top right corner of the map, you're going to see those options. So that's on our distribution maps page. This is on our query page. You can see CSV, KML, and GeoPackage, as well as share and screenshot the map. If you click to share, like the databases I was talking about earlier, you can embed the map so that if you have a website talking about, let's say, Phragmites, and you want to have an up-to-date Phragmites map on your website, then you can use this map code in the website, and that map will always be up to date instead of trying to use a screenshot. These maps are also being used kind of similarly to some of the images. They're being used in articles talking about these species. They're being used in research papers to talk about, in this case, kudzu bug spread across the southeast. And then EDDMapS itself is also being used in monitoring and management and being written up and talked about in these programs as well. So I've talked about apps a couple of times now, just to kind of give you some perspective on which app might be best for you or for your program. These are some criteria to think about. So if you're going to be working primarily with citizen scientists who maybe have novice or amateur identification skills, who aren't really going to be responsible for maintaining or managing a particular population over time, are possibly in an area with high cell phone reception. In that case, I'd recommend the EDDMapS app. It's a little bit more simple, and it has a field guide and things like that. If you are a professional, you have expert or near expert identification skills, at least on the species that you're going to be working on. If you are responsible for a particular area, such as a county or a number of counties, and so you're going to be revisiting these populations over time. And also if you're in an area with no or low cell reception, such as I've seen some of our Utah friends and Montana friends and Wyoming friends on, there's some sparse areas out there for reception, then that's when I talk about recommending the EDDMapS Pro app. Now, when I say EDDMapS Pro, Pro means professional, Pro doesn't mean profit. Both of these apps are free for anybody to use. So some of the programs that are based on EDDMapS, so the Wild Spotter program, Squeal on Pigs program, and the I've Got One program, these are regional or topically specific. So in this case, the I've Got One program, when we developed the I've Got One app with our partners in Florida, it was the first reporting app we developed. It's still available today. It's primarily for identification and reporting of invasive wildlife and plants. The Squeal on Pigs program is for reporting feral hogs across the US and Canada. And the Wild Spotter program is for recreationalists reporting invasive species in America's wild places, so forests, parks, and so forth. These are programs that have a targeted audience. They often have a specific species or species list associated with them. They often have a defined geographic scope, like with the Wild Spotter app and with Florida with I've Got One. And they sometimes have a particular audience or interest scope they're looking at, such as with the Wild Spotter app with recreationalists. And in some cases, again, they're going to have specific forms or species that they're looking for. So I'd like to thank some of our funders. So EDDMapS and some of the, you know, other programs relying on EDDMapS as its foundational system wouldn't exist without the aid and support of some of our attendees here, as well as the U.S. Forest Service, federal state agencies, nonprofits, private companies, and so forth. So again, I've seen several names I recognize here, and I want to thank everyone today for helping to support EDDMapS with grants and with contracts and so forth. To help support it so that everyone can participate in using it. Some use cases. So some of the groups on the slide before, they're using EDDMapS in very different ways. In some cases, we're a reporting platform, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel and build a whole new reporting platform to report invasive and pest species. In some cases, we are the database for that program. So we are the source of their data that exists, and as they need it, they can query data back out, and that way they don't have to maintain their own database. In some cases, there are programs that have funding, and that funding stipulates that the data has to be shared. So we are a platform they can share their data through, and that also makes the data available so that anytime someone wants to query or download that data, they can point to EDDMapS and say, here's where you can find our data. We help with prioritizations and policy making. So with the ability to look at the available data as well as some of the modeling tools that are available through EDDMapS, it helps people to identify species and populations that are a priority for management. And in general, we're a resource for data, especially when it comes to research and management. These programs are looking for large databases so that they can get as much data from one source as possible. And then we're also, in a lot of cases, also used by programs for EDRR notifications. So as new species come into the US, as new species come into states, people want to know as soon as possible when those are being found. And so EDDMapS with its verification system and with the alert system, those people can be notified in a very timely manner. And then just to kind of give you some numbers, again, we have over 72,000 accounts reporting data. We have almost 1,000 verifiers serving to review the data as it's coming in. And again, you know, they're helping to ensure that the data is high quality. We have over 7,000 accounts that have requested data. We have over 9.4 million records in the EDDMapS database, and over 7.1 million of those records have some sort of coordinate associated with them. We have 4,355 reportable species, and as I mentioned before, we do get data coming in bulk, so we do have 7,133 subjects reported. So in some cases, we're getting data reported on subjects that are generally kind of a lower priority or hyper local and aren't generally available for reporting. And of the 4,355 reportable species, we do not currently have records for 409 of them. Again, we are also being an EDRR notification program. We want to make sure that high priority species that need to be reported the first time they're found in the US or the first time they're found in Canada, that people can report them. And for the years 2020 to 2025, we've had 24,000 data download requests, which contain over 389 million records. So again, we're just going to keep coming back to your statistics are available through Connect Statistics. So I showed some of the statistics available on the My EDDMapS section for the dashboards. Again, if I select down in Connect for my statistics just this 1 year, I can see how many records I've reported, how many reviews I've done, as well as data requests that include my reported records or my reviewed records. And then additional statistics available as well further down as numbers. And coming soon, updates to our verifier manage page. It'll be easier to add verifiers. updates to the review records page. Some of the people in the audience I know are also verifiers, so we're going to update our review records page to make it easier for our verifiers to review records. And recently, within the last several months, we updated our training page. We're going to continue adding articles to our training page. And then Caroline's going to go over this later, but we did recently add that little green question mark widget to EDDMapS, and she's going to cover what that means as well. It was very, very recently added, and we're very excited about it. All right, so questions. All right, so question, is there a way to keep information on population? Okay, my question is related to Phragmites. Is there a way to keep information on populations that were already checked and found to be native? So typically speaking, we don't have a lot of native data in the EDDMapS system. It tends to be focused on invasive species and pest species. So if you're concerned about native, having to recheck and recheck and recheck populations to see if it's the native Phragmites versus the invasive Phragmites, I would recommend that you report the native populations you're finding as a negative record for the invasive Phragmites. So what that will allow you to see is that this population has already been checked and it was not Phragmites. So in EDDMapS, you can report data as positive, I saw it, treated, I saw it and performed some sort of management activity. Negative, I looked for and did not find. So in this case, it would be negative for the invasive Phragmites. Negative is also highly used for things like zebra mussels, quagga mussels, and things like that, where you have a defined area, you're looking for some very high priority species. You could do negative reporting for like emerald ash borer, Asian longhorn beetles, things like that. And then there's also, if after you've treated a population over time and you're confident it's this status, you can report revisit records as eradicated. So for data download requests, is it just your own data input or can you request data from your local area? So there's a couple different places you can request data for download. If you're going through the EDDMapS query tool, it's any filtering options you want to include, which means that you could narrow it down to by reporter. So if you just wanted a certain person's data, you could request that. But unless you apply that filter, when you request data through the EDDMapS query tool, you're getting anybody's data. And so when you put in the filters, you can say, I want, let's say for instance, I want all plant data from Tift County, Georgia. Then when I get that data out, it's going to be everyone who's reported a plant in Tift County, Georgia. All right, any additional questions?
I'd add the extra caveat of if the data has been reviewed and if the data has also been made public.
That is true. So again, with the EDDMapS query tool, it's only verified data that has been released to the public. There are some situations, so if the data is inaccurate, the verifier can elect to do one of two things. Well, the verifier could do a couple things. So if someone reported, let's say calorie pear, and it was not calorie pear, it was China berry, which would be a very different plant, but it's what's coming to mind right now. They could change the subject. They could say, this wasn't calorie pear, this is actually China berry, it's another invasive species. They also have the opportunity, like I was talking about with negative earlier, if they reported it as calorie pear, but it's a different species, it's cherry. It's a cherry species that's native to the US. Well, they can make that a negative report. So they looked for calorie pear, did not find it. And that could be released as a negative record. Now, if it was calorie pear and it reported, but it was, again, it would say it was cherry again, the verifier could elect to not release that data because maybe it's not a useful piece of data for a negative calorie pair report. And so records that are not released, and that will include records that have not been reviewed yet, are not generally available to the public.
I'll also add in that if the reporter or for some reason the verifier looked at the location and went, we really shouldn't show the exact coordinates publicly, you're not getting that data either. If a reporter said, I'm going to report, but I wish to be anonymous, you're not going to get their name or email address because they have wished to be anonymous. Verifiers and administrators in the system get to see that stuff because they need it for the follow-up. But for the public, when you're downloading data, it's good to know that those privacy and security and data quality controls are in place.
Okay, I will caveat Joe's point. We don't generally release people's email addresses. So if someone reports anonymously, you're going to see something like Bugwood Reporter. If someone is not anonymous, you're still only going to see their name unless they've made a profile, made it public, and included their email address in their profile publicly. But with private governs the public availability of specifically coordinates associated with records. So in my example of I want all data in Tift County, for records that have private coordinates, that would be downloaded to me only if I requested the data as an Excel file, a spreadsheet, and it would just say in Tift County somewhere this was found. So Kelly Cooley, as a verifier, I often use the change subject feature. I'm glad we added it because it allows that data to still be useful without it being reported as something else. Can you download the data from a geographic area other than by county, like a state park property boundary? So if I go back a couple slides here, a little further. There we go. Not too far. So this Heartland SYSMA, this is that other geographic locations I was talking about. So in EDDMapS, in the tools section, there's a heading species locator. So if you click on species locator, there's species distribution by other geographic locations. And in there, you can look for your state parks. You can look for your national forests and things like that. And then that's what you would see. You would see the boundary and you would see the data that falls within it. And then once you start interacting with the filters at the top, it'll change what's going on in and around that boundary. And does EDDMapS have an API that folks can access? I'll let you answer that, Joe.
It does. I'll actually drop it in the chat for those non-geeks in the audience that are going, API, what is that? Computers talking to computers. If you're not a computer, don't worry about it. If you are a computer or really like them, developers.bugwoodcloud.org has our documentation. It's not only for EDDMapS. It's for the image systems, presents, video. Everything we do, we try to make available. We don't have to be the ones to write the integration with whatever system you're working with. We actually look forward to having partners that do that as well.
All right, so I think we're ready to move on. We're running just a smidge behind.